In this tutorial, I'll show you how to add 2 layers to the bust part of your baby doll tank top with a V-neck. There are 2 different ways that I want to cover, and this is the first method. These methods have also been included in the new version of the instructions. Cut out 2 of the same size bust patterns and pin them together as seen. We're going to sew both pieces together with a zigzag stitch. I actually recommend using a 4x4 zigzag stitch. I'm sewing very close to the edge and making sure that I'm sewing both patterns together. I'm only using 1/4 inch of a seam allowance. Sew your entire piece all the way around. Lift your footer anytime you need to readjust your fabric, especially at the peaks and the middle part, to sew without any breaks. Take your time sewing and have fun with it. Once you've sewn all the way around, you can add lace in the same way that I showed in the first video tutorial for this beautiful baby doll tank top. There will be a link in the description box to that first video, as well as to the PDF sewing pattern for this tank top. Option 2 will also have 2 layers, but this is a no lace option in case you prefer that. I used the pattern that has more coverage, and I cut out 2 of those for the bust, laid both layers on top and pinned them all around. I'm using a 5.0 straight stitch, and I'm using 1/4 inch seam allowance. And whenever I encounter a pointy part or the middle part, I'm lifting the footer and readjusting my fabric as much as I need to. Sew all around the edges except for the bottom part, because we're going to flip the whole piece inside out. Inspect for symmetry when you flip it inside out. Then if it looks good, flip it back again and sew one more time, but this time sew closer slightly to the edge. You can also sew on top of the first stitching that you just made, but don't sew too close to the inside of your fabric. The purpose of the second stitching is to reinforce the first stitch path. As you can see here, I sewed really close to the first stitching and even on top of the first stitch path on a certain part. Cut off any excess fabric from the edges, but be careful not to cut into what you've just sewn. Remove the pins at the bottom and flip everything inside out again. This piece is now done, and you can move on to the next step. The second method of sewing 2 layers is shown on top. It is better used for a top that will not have lace around the neckline. The first method of sewing 2 layers is shown on the bottom, and this method is better for adding lace around the neckline. Here is another way of adding your shoulder straps, in case you followed the second method of adding 2 layers to the front top part. On the wrong side, sew reinforcement stitches that are the width of your strap. Be careful and do not go too far into your fabric, but be sure to sew on top of the stitching around your neckline. You can also hand sew this part. Then use a seam ripper to create a hole for your straps. The reinforcement stitches should help prevent your neckline from coming undone. Push your strap in through the hole you made and adjust your fabric so it looks nice, and pin it in place. Sew your strap onto the very top of your fabric. I sewed a second time slightly below the first stitching to secure my strap better. Check out the first video tutorial I made for this top, and there will be a link to the PDF sewing pattern with instructions in the description box. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.